Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'll be demonstrating how to write an Apex test class. If you remember in my last episode, I've demonstrated how to write a trigger. So that's a great opportunity for us to do a Apex test uh, for that class I've developed or a trigger I've developed. Because in Apex, right, if you wanted to push your changes to a production, right, then you need to have an Apex test associated with it. And your test should be at least, your test coverage should be over 75%, right? So we're going to do that today. And I'm going to show you some best practices as well. First, let me start with a bad practice, right? Then, I will walk you through how to, improve it. Okay. So the first thing first, as usual, so you need to have an org if you haven't done so. And if you haven't watched my previous episode, I would highly encourage you to do so because I will be doing Apex test based on that change I've developed. Okay. So if you haven't watched it, I would highly encourage you to check that out first before you come and watch this one. Okay. Sounds simple? Okay. All right. So I logged into my org. Excuse me. I'm going to go to the developer console. It's pretty straightforward. You go to the scarecrow icon, and we're going to go to developer console. Yeah. And then just wait to load. Okay, we're going to close this off. Okay, so last time we developed a trigger, right? So we developed a trigger around content document, right? So that's what we did. So content doc. Oh, that's right. Content document. Or okay, let me do one thing. We're gonna do so that's very interesting. It's not showing up. Let me say update information. Probably it might show. Okay, this is the one, right? And so I've separated this into a separate class, right? So let's bring that up as well. So we're gonna do find in files again, and that's the one. And I'll need to look for this one as well. Okay, nice and easy. So we're gonna do find in file. Oh, sorry, not find, replace, search in file, and we will be looking for this one. Okay, so we should be writing Apex class to Apex test for these classes, right? And each class should have minimum code coverage of 75% and above. There is a financial force library out there that for test smoking. You can use that. That's pretty good for enterprise, design patterns. But I'm not going to do that because this is a pretty straightforward, right? Very basic. Okay, so I shall cover that in the later future. Financial force library for enterprise design pattern and the mock test, stubs. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna write a trigger now. So Apex test class. So go to new and go to Apex class. So let me name it as content document trigger test. Yeah. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Now, how do you know that this class belongs to a test class, right? So we have to annotate this class with a keyword called is test, right? There are different variables for that. Something called C data equals to true, C all data equals to true. So if you wanted to use the data from the underlying Salesforce object, then you have to set that, C all data equals to true. But we don't want that because that's not really a good practice to rely on underlying database unless you have to do that. I mean, and for whatever reason, right? But for most of the case, if you you can develop your own, stub, or you can say your own sample data. So in this case, we don't have to rely on underlying database from Salesforce because what happens is if you say, right, for instance, if you decided to use the underlying Salesforce data for your test, right? So it all works fine on Sandbox, pretty good. Then you move to another, say, UAT. For some reason, it failed because you are linking to an existing data which was available in Sandbox, but it's not available in UAT. So you see the problem, right? So you have to work your way around. I mean, it works. I'm not saying that that practice don't work, but it should be the last option. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do. So this is how you annotate now. You're telling to Apex compiler, look, this class is a test class. Okay. So because we have annotated with each test, now we have to create a dummy data, right? So how to do that? So we have to do something called test setup. Okay. And we do static void and method, whatever, demo. Okay, so well, you name whatever you want, or you can say dummy. So what will happen is, if you create any kind of object or any kind of data here, this will be available throughout the instance of this class. So what I meant by that, let's say you create an account object here. Okay, let me give you an example here first, because we anyway need to create an account object. Account. So I will explain to you in a second. New account. Okay, so you can do a dot name. So whatever demo. Okay, so it doesn't matter. What name you give, because it's just a dummy account. Insert it. Okay. Now this is a place where you created an account. Now, if you wanted to access this account, you can do so in other test methods. Say, for instance, you have a test method here. I will explain to you in a second. But I'm just saying, this account, right, throughout the instance of this class, throughout the lifespan of this test class, you will have access to this account. Means any other methods which you're going to create underneath, right, test method, you can access this account. So that's the advantage. But the drawback is, if for whatever reason, right, the DML operation fails, entire test fails. Okay, so you have to keep that into consideration. Right, so now I will be creating a beer sold dummy data, because that's on basis of that we have developed a trigger. Because if you look at this class here, right, we are actually not this one. We are actually checking, right, whether the content document linked ID belongs to your beer sold, right? So if you see this line of code, so if it's not, I'm not bothering with the trigger. Okay, so for that reason, we have to create a beer sold object, because we have to link a file to this beer sold object. Okay, so we're gonna do beer beer. I don't remember the name of the object, so let's go back to the object manager. And so we're gonna look at the beer sold. Okay, so this is what we are after. And so I'm gonna grab this API name. Okay, and so we go here, and we're just gonna copy here. Sorry, it doesn't work for whatever reason. It's annoying. That's all good. Okay, so so we're gonna do B. I'm just gonna do beer, right? Okay. Okay, so we have, hopefully intelligence works, account. So this is what we need an account for, right? Because we have to link an account ID, and I can only do if there's an account available for me to do so, right? That's the reason why I create an account here. I mean, if I would have used set see all data equals true, I would have put the dummy, account hard coded to an account ID, but that's a very bad practice. I mean, like I said, you can do so unless it's really important, unless you have no other choice. That's all well and good. But for now, we have a choice to do a dummy data, right? Okay, so now we're gonna do quantity, because quantity. I think I remember that's b dot. I remember that I spelled this wrong when I created the field, but that's not a problem here for this point of time. So we have this b.name. So these are the mandatory fields which we need. So beer name, whatever. Okay. And it's going to do insert b. Okay. Now we will not create a content document population here, because I wanted to do that when I do a test method. Okay. Because so the requirement is, right, if you remember in the last episode, so what I've done was, right, if let's go to the beer sold object, okay. So when you so let me explain. So beer sold, okay. So we have this beer sold object here, okay, like porter beer, right? So we have this related list here. That's the notes and attachment. So when you upload a file, right? So it will go and set a field called include something, right? Include doc equals to true. Okay, so that's all we are going to test. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to write a test class to show that include doc equals to true, right? So if it is equals to true, then we have successful test class. Okay, I'll demonstrate what I meant by that. So I'm going to show you how to write a bad code first. Okay, then I'm going to walk you through to find a best practice. Okay, so we're going to create another method. So we'll say test test in doc creation. Okay, so now you might be wondering what is this is test, right? So is test means that this specific method will be executed as a part of a test run, right? So when you run this test class, right, using this run test here, it will run this method. Okay, if you do not want this method to run, so you can remove this annotation here. Okay, so when you do run test, right, this method will be skipped. Okay, so that's the reason why we have this annotation. Okay, I hope that's simple, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do, so as you know that for creating a attachment, right, in Lightning, we need to first insert a data to content version, and then once the data get inserted to a content version, we need to grab that ID and create a another object called content document link and link the content version ID to this content document link. Okay, we are gonna do that just now, so don't worry about it. Don't get overwhelmed. So I've talked about the file attachment in a separate video. So if you're interested, I'll put the link in the description, right? So you can watch, and if you wanted to do file attachment using Apex code, that's the best way to do it. So, okay. So what we're gonna do, so let's create a dummy file. Okay, I need a basic string file, say string text file. All I need is very simple text. Hello world, right? I'm not interested in anything fancy here. So I'm gonna do content version. Okay, so we're gonna do doc where equals to new content version. Okay, so doc where. Please don't ask me why this is needed, why doc version is this. I have talked about in a separate episode. That's the reason why I said I'll put the link for file attachment so that if you're interested to know why I'm doing this, please go through that. Okay, because this the topic for today's session is limited to writing test class. Okay, so I wanted to focus on that rather than going into the nitty gritty detail about how to create a file and kind of stuff, right? Okay, so content location. So for now, what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to attach a file to this beer sold object. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay, so unfortunately we need to do a lot of step here for that. Okay, so path on client equals to, so we're going to do demo dot text. Yeah, so blob, so we're going to do text data, so we're going to do text data here. So we're going to do blob dot value of, so we want to create a blob of the text file. Yeah, okay, and so we're going to do doc version. So we're going to do version data. So the version data will be your text data, which is the blob one. Okay, and we're gonna insert doc where. Yeah, sounds good. So we have created a content. Let me see if it works first. Okay, let's save it to see if it's all good. Okay, so that's good, nice and easy. Okay, now we have created content version, like I said. But the real magic happens now because we have to create a content document link. That's where the trigger get initiated, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do, so we do string where ID equals to, we're just gonna do select content document ID from content version where ID equals to stock where dot ID, yeah, dot content document ID. Sounds nice and easy, right? Okay, so we got the version ID from, that's a content document ID from this from the record we just now created. Okay, now we're gonna do content document link, the real object which we're interested into, doc link. Okay, we're gonna do new content document link, right? Okay, and we're gonna do doc link dot content document ID, where ID, right? So I will show you the problem in the code the way I'm doing. I'll explain to you in a second. Let me finish this first. Let me run the test class, and then we're going to tidy up the this class a bit, yeah? Because there is a potential problem, but you will not notice initially. Okay, right. So we're gonna do doc link dot share type equals to I, yeah. We're gonna have doc come on, doc link dot visibility equals to, like I said, if you find this overwhelming, please watch my file attachment videos. I'm not going to explain to you right now what I'm doing for why you need a content document ID, why you need a linked ID. So you will need to follow that video a bit, but just to give you a little bit context, right? Whenever you do an attachment, right? Whenever you do a Lightning file attachment, you need to create a document version first, okay? So once you create a document version, which I'm doing from line number 22 to 28, right? That's exactly what I'm doing. And then you have to do a content document link creation, okay? So that's another step you have to do. And once you do that, you have to link this content version to this content document link. The way to do that, you have to link the content document ID of the content document link with the content document ID of the content version. I know it's confusing, right? I explained in the other video. Please go through that, okay? So then we need share type, visibility, right? There's all kind of stuff, yada yada. Okay. So now we're gonna do system dot test dot start test. Okay. So we're gonna start the test. Now I'm gonna insert the doc link. Yeah. And so what we're gonna do, so now we're gonna do beer. So we call this one object here, beer sold. B equals to, right? Now select, we have include doc underscore C. I pretty much remember this name because I created this one. So sold. Oh well, in fact, I've created this custom object as well. So, but it's been a while I worked on it. But the doc one, include doc, I've created recently. So I just remember that's pretty bad with spelling at times. Just horrible with it. System dot assert. So we're gonna do here b dot include doc equals to true. We're gonna say include doc is set to true. Right. I'll explain to you that what I'm doing right now. Yeah. Okay. So. Right. So let me save it and let's see if it works. I think there is a problem somewhere. Okay. So. Doc link select ID. I don't know why it is not working here. Let me see. What is the problem here? There's something wrong here. Let me have a look. Oh, come on, let's look at there. It's time to troubleshoot. Invalid schema beer. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Absolutely right. Yeah. And yeah, so that's sorted. And yeah, and here we have the same problem again. The schema is wrong. Yeah. Right. Okay. So all good. Right. Okay. So the system dot test dot start test. Right. That's what tells the code that look, I'm initiating the test. Okay. And then whatever comes after that, it's a part of the test initiation process. Right. So what I wanted to do when the test get executed, right, I want to insert the content document link, right, which I'm doing here. And then once it's done, right, once the insert happens, the trigger will fire behind the scene, right? Because if you remember, we wrote this trigger on after insert. So after insert trigger will kick in, and when the trigger will kick in, so the include flag will set to true. So that's exactly what I'm doing. Select include from beer sold. And so now you might wonder why I'm getting beer sold, right? Only just one. What if it updates, other beer sold items? Because if you look at the org, um, there are 4 or 5. So that's a good question. So to the answer to that, we are not looking at the Salesforce underlying database values, right? We are not looking at that. Instead, we are relying on the test data what we created. So if you look at this line, right, line number 10 to 14, we are only creating one beer sold record, right? So that's the record which we will be working on throughout the instance of this class. That's exactly what I meant before, right? If you remember. So if I create another test method, right, the same beer sold value will be available to that class as well. That's why we create a dummy data here, and it will be available to the all other test methods what we're going to create. Okay. So that's fantastic, right? Nothing fancy about it. And then we do all the operation, and system.assert will test whether the value of include doc equals to true. If not, it will fail the test. Okay. And then we stop the test. Nice and easy, right? Let's tidy up the code. And I'll shift tab, sorry. So Control S. So this is a very, very simple stuff. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the test here. Okay. And so what we're going to do, we will go here down, right? And we're going to look at the test, right? So the test is successful. You see, if it's a green tick, it means successful. Right? So let's look at the code coverage of these 3 classes, because we wanted to make sure we have at least covered 75%, right? I mean, if not, the minimum we should have, ideally speaking, you should have more than 80 to 85. That's an ideal. But I mean, if you get 100%, that's very good. But for whatever reason, if you manage to get 75, 78, that's good. That it will let you pass the code. But the thing is, with the test case, right? One thing I just wanted to point out, you have to write a test case for the positive scenario as well as for the negative scenario, right? Just don't write a test case for a simple scenario. Oh yeah, my code coverage is 75 or 78%. I'm done with this stuff. That's not really good. You need to create a test case for another scenario as well. You have to look at the code where, the part of the Apex code which the tests failed to execute. For instance, let me give you a very simple example. Let's look at a content document. Okay. Now, you might wonder, where do I look the code percentage, right? You can look at code coverage here at the top. Okay. As you can see, 100%. Right? So you can see that this is the part of the code that's executed. Okay. Now we look at the beer sold. Okay. So update beer sold. So you can see all tests. See that it's a 95% test coverage, which is pretty good. And now you can see that it's not executing the exception because there is no exception, right? So if you wanted to cover the exception, you have to write a test case which fails this class, right? That's another thing. Let's go to the beer info, right? It covers 81%. It's not too great, but it's not too bad as well. It covers 81%. I mean, you will be able to push the code to production without any problem. But that being said, right, you have to work on, system dot, how to handle the exceptions. So you have to write a test case. You have to pretty much write a negative test case, right? So, but that being said, yeah, I mean, if you're under, I mean, I won't use the word under tight deadline because that should not be an excuse to write a bad code, right? Because it will bite you in the bum in the later stage. Because trust me, if you write a bad code at the stage, and then going forward, it will become very difficult to maintain when the more customization kicks in. Okay, so that comes to the bad code side. Right now, look at this code. Now, you might think, oh, the code is great. It's not great. There's a big potential problem. Let's say I have to create another test scenario, right? Um, let's say I wanted to create another test. Um, okay, for some reason, okay. Let me give you an example. Let's say this trigger, right, cater for not just what's it called, beer stall, but it cater for other object like accounts, contacts, all right? Because in Salesforce, right, any kind of file attachment, right, it gets trigger. So any kind of file attachment you do, so content document object will come into picture, right? So let's say if you wanted to cover 3, 4 scenarios, right? If you wanted to cover triggers for accounts, contacts and other stuff, right? So if you wanted to write a test case, or let's say if you wanted to test these two methods independently, right? Right, which got nothing to do with the trigger, right? So you have to, and you wanted to do an insert, right? Like you're doing here. You wanted to do another insert, right? Here. So what do you normally do? You're gonna copy paste the entire code, right? Simple scenario, just an example like this, and you might insert, you might tweak something like here. Instead of beer sold here, right? You might say contact, right? You might say contact, okay? So, and you might get, something from contact, some flag from contact, and you say, okay, this equals to true, right? Just an example, right? So you see a potential problem here. You have duplicated the code 2 times, which is not great, right? Because, ideally in a programming career, in a programming world, it's good to reuse the code, right? In this case, we are not doing it. We are actually, we have duplicated the same code here. We have duplicated the same code here, right? Which is, except a little bit of tweak variation, okay? So which is not good, which is, I believe it's not a good practice, right? So how do we solve it, right? So to solve this, we can create a test data factory, okay? So what we're gonna do, let me get rid of this boy here, yeah? So this is because it's very important you write a better test class, right? Because it's as important as writing a normal Apex class. Because, when someone looks at the code, right? It makes it difficult for the person to understand, right? If you duplicate like a same line of code 50 times, it's not a good practice whatsoever. I mean, that's a big no for on my side. Okay, so how do we do that? Okay, what we're going to do, so we do content document link. Oh, come on, test factory. Yeah, you can. So this is just a simple factory class, and as usual, so we're going to do. So what we're going to do, we will copy this code here. Okay, and so we're just going to do something, and we will do at the rate. So we all do exactly the same what I did here at the top, right? So we're gonna do at the rate is test, because we do not want the code coverage, this factory to be a part of a code coverage, right? Because if you put is test, right, is test, then it will not be included as a part of code coverage. Code coverage will only be included for normal Apex class. If you're using interfaces, right, a normal interface, it will not be included as a part of code coverage, right? Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to do public static, yeah? So we're going to do content with, so we after content, document link, yeah? Get content, create new content. Come on. doc link. Okay, so we're gonna keep this for now, and we'll tidy up in a second. Okay, let's copy paste the entire code here, right? And we are after return content document link, right? I'm just gonna put we're just gonna put it simple, yeah. And what we're gonna do, so we will do it here, right? And so we're gonna do return try, yeah. Just gonna do whatever, catch exception ex. I'm just gonna do return now, yeah. Okay, so I'm after returning this. So this is, it's all good, but this is not generic enough, right? Because we are only pointing to this this beer sold ID, which is not really good, right? So what we're gonna do, ID linked ID, right? So it's gonna do this, because let's assume that we wanted to keep all the other stuff similar, right? Because we don't want it to change anything. If you wanted to change other stuff, you can add as a params. That's all good and fine. But for now, just to keep it simple, right? I'm just gonna keep it to just one, okay? Right. So that's pretty much did the job here. Okay, so we're gonna do content test factory here, and what we're gonna do, see the magic here. We will delete all of this stuff, okay? And I don't want any of this stuff. So what we're gonna do, I will do sorry, come on. We are after beer sold, right? Beer sold b equals to select ID from beer sold limit 1. Yeah, fantastic, right? So what we're gonna do, copy this boy here, yeah, content document, factory dot, what's this? Right, so we can do this something like that. So we're gonna do this here, okay. And so hang on, just copy this. Yeah, and here we're gonna do, just do b dot id, yeah. Okay, so and we're gonna do insert doc link. Yep. Let's see if it works first of all. All right, we got a problem here. What is the problem here? Let me see. Oh, sorry. I don't want this one. So it's just to be one. Yeah. Okay. So just gonna do. Yeah. You can see that how much I simplify the code here, right? So I've moved all the code to a factory here. Okay. Pretty nice and easy, right? So if I wanted to reuse this part, I can reuse it in other part of the test class, right? All I have to do, I just have to worry about this line of a code, right? Without duplicating. So let's run this and let's see what happens. Okay, so we're gonna run this and let's look at the test coverage here. Oh, so it successfully ran just now. You see, 7:46. That's the time in New Zealand at this time. At this point of time, it's Wednesday here, right? And update beer sold, so 91%, right? 91%, and it's 100%. So that's pretty much good. I'm happy with that for now, because I could write negative scenario, but my main intention is just to demonstrate how to write a better test class, right? I mean, you can improve on it. What I want you guys to do, if you are new to test class, please practice. Please try to read about test classes, right? It's always good to write a test class in an efficient way, right? Um, and that being said, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you have an amazing day or evening or afternoon wherever you are. Greetings and adios. Take care. Bye bye.